The Waco History Podcast is sponsored by Brotherwell Brewery on historic Bridge Street in Waco.
Welcome to the Waco History Podcast. We're going to air for you over the next few months a special series of Waco History Living Stories. These were segments that were originally aired on KWBU here in Waco. They were produced by the Institute for Oral History editor, Michelle Holland, and narrated by two fabulous narrators, Louis Mazé and Kim Patterson. And so these highlight oral histories from the collection of the Institute for Oral History at Baylor University, which I direct, which has been around since 1970 and has over 1,000 interviews related to Waco and McLennan County history, and we're happy to highlight those here.
Cross the Brazos at Waco, ride hard and I'll make it by dawn.
This Living Stories featurette for Waco history harkens back to a time of year that old-timers talk about. It came in the fall. It was hog-killing time. So rural Americans throughout the South would plan for the annual hog-killing. Let's listen in as local folks talk about their experiences with hog-killing time.
This is Living Stories, featuring voices from the collections of the Baylor University Institute for Oral History. I'm Louis Mazé. At one time, the approach of cold weather signaled for many rural Americans in the South the time to begin planning for the annual hog killing. It wasn't pretty, but provided food for the coming winter months. Louise Murphy, who grew up in Falls County in the 20s and 30s, describes some of the preparations involved in a hog killing.
We would have to get the old pot full of hot water and get us a barrel and get us a place to hang this hog. We had to have a cold day to get it so we could get our meat cold.
Thomas Wayne Harvey recalls what his father did before killing a hog in October of '44 in Waco.
He had to dig a pit, and what he did, he went and got a 55-gallon drum, and he dug a pit, and he put the drum in there at a 45-degree angle. And at the bottom end of the barrel, he built a fire pit that would heat that drum, and he'd fill it full of water until it was almost level of coming out at the top. After he built his pit, he built an A-frame directly above the barrel.
While many hogs were struck down with a single gunshot, Murphy, along with Estelle Peterson, explains what her father did.
He would take the axe, the back of the axe, and hit the hog in the head, and this would addle the hog until he took the butcher knife and just nearly sliced his head off.
It's awful how.
And in the meantime, he would get a little single tree that come off of the wagon, single tree. First thing we had to do was hang that hog up by that single tree and let all the blood come out.
Harvey relates the next step in the process.
And then they gut it. And after they gut it, then they put the hog in this boiling water head first. They'd pull the hog back out, and it was so hot you had to have gloves to touch the hog. But what they did, they'd take a piece of board with a sharp edge on it, and they'd scrape the hair off the hog. And that hog would turn to a real pretty pink. And they'd do that. If the hog was too big, then they'd turn it around and stick it in the barrel backwards, until the hog was completely hairless.
There was an art to scraping a hog, as Murphy explains.
We'd start scraping. Anybody that could get around that hog had a knife, and you scrape all that hair off. And you don't cut the meat. You got to know how to do it, or you get a little spanking. You got to know not to cut the meat.
The hog was then ready to be disassembled, processed, and stored, with no part being wasted. Nowadays, pork items can be found year-round in grocery stores, thanks to refrigeration and freezing. But once upon a time, pork was on the dinner table only during certain months of the year. For more information about this program or the Institute for Oral History, visit us at baylor.edu/livingstories.
Thanks for listening to the Waco History Podcast. Like what you heard? Subscribe, rate, and review our show on iTunes so we can reach more listeners. You can find show notes and info on every episode at wacohistorypodcast.com, and more info on Waco's past at wacohistory.org. Our theme music, used with permission, is Cross the Brazos at Waco, performed by the late Billy Walker. For more info on Billy's music, go to billywalker.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
When I reach San Antonio.
This has been a Rogue Media podcast.